Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce, who is back at it again for another Bleav in Hawks episode. It's been a little over a week since we did an episode, so obviously going to come back, obviously, with a slow time in the offseason. Sometimes there's just not a lot to talk about, but there's actually a few things I want to talk about today with you guys concerning our Atlanta Hawks, including the most recent thing before I just hopped on here about Dyson Daniels and apparently him being a throw-in to the trade, which they got Hawks fans running with that and saying, oh, he's not important. They didn't want him in the first place. Obviously, some Trae Young conversation. Brad Rowland making a very great point last week about Trae Young in the postseason, and also about CEO Steve Koonin's comments about potentially Trae Young being the oldest starter in the starting lineup for the Atlanta Hawks this season. Obviously, could just be smoke. Koonin does say a lot of wild things to get people talking, but I'm going to talk about that possibility and more on this episode of Bleav in Hawks. So I appreciate you guys tuning in to the podcast and showing some love to your boy. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you're watching this on YouTube, and leave a rating or a review if you're listening to any audio podcast platform out there. But like I said, let's go ahead and dive right into what I was saying. Obviously, Dyson Daniels, man, that a lot of people are excited about, but some Hawks fans aren't. Dyson Daniels was a guy who is he's not polarizing, but he is a guy who I think the majority of people are excited about, but there are some people who are just like not a big fan, don't think he brings that much to the table. There isn't a lot of excitement there for him for certain people, which is fine because everybody has players that they prefer. Everybody has players that they like. Everybody has players that they just feel better about, right? And Dyson is someone who obviously people are going to make judgments on based off his first couple of seasons with the Pelicans. People forget Dyson Daniels was a pick of high value for the Pelicans. I Bleav he was a lottery pick for the Pelicans. Let me go ahead and check that right now for you guys. But he is a guy who, let's see here. Yes, he was the 8th pick in the 2022 draft. So Dyson Daniels was a lottery pick for the New Orleans Pelicans. So clearly, if you're a lottery pick, there has to be some value there to you, right? Hawks acquired him in the DeJounte Murray trade, which has now brought some questions. So Brian Windhorst on the Windy Collective apparently mentioned, I haven't heard it, apparently he mentioned that the focus of that trade was that Lakers first round pick that the Hawks wanted, right? And so apparently some people Bleav that now that means that Dyson was a throw-in. And for me, that's kind of the issue. If you actually listen to the clip, apparently, because again, I'm reading this off of social, he never actually said that Dyson was a throw-in. He just said that he added great size to their roster. But a lot of people are taking the fact that he wasn't the main part of that, or I guess the sole focus of that trade, as a throw-in. And you can have a main target, but still have players that you want in that trade. And I Bleav Dyson, for a team whose weakness is the point of attack, to say that a player who fixes that spot is a throw-in is weird to me. Listen, we don't know how the negotiations started. We don't know if they initially, we always heard the rumors about the Hawks wanting potentially to get Trey Murphy. That was a guy that they really wanted, right? And then, Pelicans wanted a Kongwu. And we don't know how actually the trade talks went, what broke down, how it started to how it ended. But to say that Dyson was a throw-in to me, I don't Bleav that. I don't Bleav that. Cody Zeller was a throw-in. He was the definition of a throw-in because they had to match salaries. So they threw him in there to match the salaries. So that's a throw-in. Dyson was a part of the initial trade. So EJ Liddell may be a throw-in, probably, since he's not on the team no more, right? The pick probably was the primary thing they wanted, and that's fine. But I know for a fact, one thing you heard from the DeJounte Murray rumors from the in-season, you heard from multiple reporters, the Hawks want a pick and a young player. Well, what did the Pelicans give us? A pick and a young player. So based off those reports, the Hawks got exactly what they wanted. It's crazy that that young player was a throw-in all of a sudden. And like I said, this just goes into the Dyson Daniels narrative. If you're a fan of him, if you're not a fan of him, like I said, some Hawks fans are not a fan of him or don't think he's going to provide the type of impact and value that some people think he will. Obviously, that's left up for judgment. We won't know anything till he hits that court for the Atlanta Hawks and we see what he does. But the throw-in argument is kind of weird, bro. Like, because like I said, apparently part of the soundbite, he was not labeled a throw-in. I may edit this into this episode, that clip, if I can find it. We'll see. But yeah, like to say Dyson was a throw-in to me is just kind of, I just feel like that's a narrative that we're pushing. Like I said, every fan has narratives. We all have our narratives. I have narratives. You have narratives. Everybody got narratives. We're not perfect people. We have people that we all have maybe a player who's made that we think can be good because we just Bleav in them, right? That's just how it goes. Like we have these narratives that we create within our minds to say this justifies what I say, right? And so if you're a person who doesn't think Dyson's going to impact the team, you're probably going to be on the side of him saying, oh yeah, he was a throw into the trade. I don't think the Hawks really wanted him. The Pelicans just gave him up. Plus, if you're the Pelicans, if you traded for DeJounte, the backcourt was already crowded. So you kind of needed to move a player. And if you're the Hawks, you probably don't want Alvarado because he's too small. Nobody wants CJ McCollum. So, I mean, you're not getting Trey Murphy. So, like, you kind of had to go with Dyson. But at the same time, Dyson was a lottery pick with a lot of upside value and already statistically is a great NBA defender, which is what you really need, is a great NBA defender. So ideally that would work for you. And then you got him on a rookie deal. And if Dyson develops, because his biggest question obviously is his offensive game. If Dyson develops his offensive game and continues to improve and continues to maybe develop a 3-point shot, now we're going to look at him differently than maybe how some people look at him right now at this moment. Because right now, what's going to carry him is his defense and being disruptive, creating turnovers, playing on ball, a good help defense, guarding the other team's best defender. That's what's going to be his biggest thing, realistically. So, this, like I said, this narrative talk about Dyson and he's a throw-in is ridiculous to me. Dyson Daniels is a guy that I think the Hawks wanted. He's a guy who helps with issues that they had on the roster, which is the main reason why I don't think he's a throw-in. Imagine saying we're going to add a player who helps us with some of our issues as a throw-in. So, yeah, that's just my feeling on that. Dyson Daniels not a throw-in. We will see what his impact on this team will be. We will see what his role will be. We will see what Quinn Snyder does with him, and we will go from there when we get to that point. So that's just my take on that first. Definitely leave your comments down below if you have any thoughts as well. Definitely leave it down below. What do you think of that entire thing, right? But moving on. So I want to mention Trae Young has been in the news. I want to mention something reported by Tim McMenamin, ESPN. And basically, he said that there was no trade market for Trae Young, and that's why Trae Young is a Hawk and why he stayed in Atlanta. Right? So obviously, if you're a Hawks fan, you have been for multiple years now on the end of Trae's going to get traded. The Hawks want to move Trae Young. Trae Young trade, Lakers, Spurs, like all that, right? Keywords, right? Those are the keywords you hear for Trae Young. Now it's, there wasn't a trade market for him, right? And listen, we've heard multiple reports that the trade market isn't that strong for Trae, right? And listen, I'm not saying that maybe that could be true. That couldn't be true. But my thing about that is, if you remember some of the reports we heard going into the offseason, a lot of reporters were tweeting and saying that the Hawks want to move Trae Young. He was the primary person they wanted to move this offseason. And so my problem with that was, if he's the main person that they want to move, then wouldn't they have made more of an effort to move him? You know? Because like I said, I do believe they had conversations with teams. I believe they touched base with teams. I'm not saying they didn't. But I don't think anything ever got serious realistically. Like the DeJounte trade literally was like before the draft. That came together pretty quickly. And Grant Shirley made a great point. He said the thing about that was, if you're telling me if the Pelicans had a chance to get Trae Young, they wouldn't have wanted to get Trae Young. Obviously, because of who Trae Young is and his caliber of player, you would want more than what you got for DeJounte back for him. And if that is deterring people from trading for him, okay. I mean, if you think about a lot of superstar trades, you notice that you'll have like a list of teams initially interested, and then multiple teams will kind of drop out just because it's like, all right, well, we don't want to give up that type of capital or whatever we have to give up for that player. So then eventually, by the time a star player gets traded, it's between like one or two teams who's just willing to risk it all because they're trying to win a championship. And so just the fact that that was reported, I think just kind of made me feel like this feels like a saving grace a little bit of, oh, well, he didn't get traded because he had no market. When I'm one of those people, and people want to call me a trade lover, fine. But I was one of the people who said they're not moving Trae unless they get an offer that blows them away, because you're not giving away your franchise player for nothing. Like you need a reason to give away your franchise player. And I've said this multiple times too in that equation. Quinn Snyder did not come here to rebuild in terms of just having a completely bad team he knows is bad from the start of the season. If Trae is out, then I would think Quinn is out. And I truly believe that. I don't think Quinn would sign off on, hey, we're just going to completely tear this down and be bad for a couple of years. I don't think Quinn would sign up for that, if I'm being completely honest with you. He wants to at least know he has a competitive team, and he'll work with that. And so that's why, to me, I never really saw Trae Young being moved as a possibility unless a team came out the woodworks with a great deal that the Hawks could not pass up for Trae Young. And listen, Trae Young is entering actually a very crucial year, because also in that same, expert of article, they mentioned that Trae Young's actually entering a very crucial year, which I think everybody in the Hawks fandom knows this is a crucial year for Trae Young. I even know it's a crucial year for Trae Young. Trae Young after the season is eligible for another max, which obviously is a bigger max than we just got. Obviously, in today's NBA, with that new salary cap restrictions, teams have to really make sure that they want to pay guys that type of money because of that. It's not, like I said, like the other cap CBA where, it just depends if the owner wants to pay, which obviously we can get into wrestler and him not wanting to pay and right? But with this hard cap stuff and just the aprons, Trae Young's entering a year where they're saying that, he has to kind of rebuild his trade value. My thing about that is, well, what do you mean rebuild his trade value? If he comes out and gives you 30 and 10, I mean, he's doing the same thing he's done all these years. I don't know what that means by building his trade value. If they have success, if the Hawks have a surprisingly, in some people's eyes, good season and make a run in the playoffs, I mean, at that point, you're not trading him either way. So, like, what does that mean, rebuild his trade value? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever you see is what you're going to see, is what you've seen the last few years from him. Right? I think that right now we are in a situation with Trae where, listen, they have to decide they want to give him that super max. I think they refer to what he has right now as a safe max. And then I forget what they referred to if he gets that next max extension, what the term they use to refer to that max, just because it costs more against your cap, just because it's a bigger contract in general. And so obviously now, like this coming off season would be the off season where Trae Young and the Hawks, if there was to be a breakup would happen. Because if they just say, we with the way we are as a team, we cannot afford to give you that max deal, then we can get into that discussion. I've always said, too, Trae got a few more years left on his contract. So why would they trade him this offseason when there's no – where is that pressure coming from? He's still under contract for multiple years. You know, what exactly was the pressure to trade him? Like this offseason coming up would be pressure to trade him, but that just is dictated on how the season goes and how Trae feels and how the organization feels. So, you know, I don't think Trae Young right now is in a position where, you know, he's worried about it too much. He's always been a guy who just kind of focuses on himself. I saw a tweet, somebody was like, "What if you're Trae Young, what are you thinking right now?" And it's like, he knows that he has a lot of people who are doubting his ability and doubting what he can do and doubting the type of player he is. And so he's just like, okay, I hear you. And we'll see what y'all are saying about the season's end. I mean, you can make an argument if the Hawks have a winning record and make the postseason, and let's say they're not a play-in team, you could say, I mean, realistically, Trae Young probably is going to be a huge part of that. Narratives might change on him. Some of the unfair narratives might change on him. So, you know, and this takes me into my next point about Brad Rowland made a tweet last week where he talked about Trae Young's playoff performances, right? He talked about how he was just like, it's crazy that people would just forget what he did in the postseason. It's crazy that people just forget, you know, the numbers he puts up and what he was doing during that time. And I very much agree with him. Because people do forget. Because this is what he said. This is what Brad Rowland said. He said, I had an epiphany. Trae Young gets covered and discussed as if the 2021 playoffs never happened. He averaged 29-9 while leading Atlanta to the Eastern Conference Finals as the number one option by the widest of margins. And it's just memory hold to a point of comps to guys who have never done anything. The weird skepticism and dismissal of Young would make more sense if he was a guy who had never played in the postseason or flopped there. He had a terrible series against Miami. That did happen. But he still averaged, in the entire playoffs as a whole, 26 points and 9 assists. They also won 2 games since the Eastern Conference Finals, and Trae Young missed a couple of games, obviously, as we know. In the Boston Celtics series, the last series that he actually played in the playoffs, he averaged 33 points, basically 34, and basically 12 assists a game against a 57-win Celtics team, including a 38-point, 13-assist game win without DeJounte Murray in Game 5. That was only 15 months ago. So, you know. And then somebody mentioned it's been 3 years, right, since that, right? Because people say, why do we keep bringing that up? They said, and Brad was like, yeah, he really struggled. All he's done the last 3 seasons is average 27 points and 10 assists on almost 60% true shooting percentage. A brutal slump. Can't imagine why people think he stinks. Literally, he's saying what I've been thinking this whole time. People just like this is one thing I want y'all to think about. This is one thing I want y'all to think about. Trae Young's had 3 playoff runs in his career. We agree that Miami series was bad, yes. But he's had 2 really good playoff runs. 2021, and then we play Boston. Usually in this league, we criticize people for not showing up in playoff games, in playoff series. And you can point out the Philly series in 2021 and say that wasn't his best work. Still won it. He still made key plays. Like, so at the end of the day, win's a win. You can't dock him for that. You're not going to be perfect every game, especially with the amount of what he had to do to get that team to the Eastern Conference Finals. Because that team, he was by far the number one option and got them there. But what I want to say is think about this. The last time you saw him he was averaging over 30 a game against a 57 win team. And hit, and everybody remembers the iconic game-winning threes he hit in the game 5 in Boston without DeJounte Murray, how he willed that team to a victory. And people just act like that didn't happen. People just act like that never happened. And that to me is wild. That's wild to me. Because it's not like this is listen, if you don't like Trae Young, that's fine. If you don't like Trae Young, that's fine. If you don't like his game, cool, whatever, that's fine. But literally, there are players in this game who have yet to have the performances that Trae Young has had in the postseason. People want to talk about Tyrese Halliburton. Most people would agree throughout most of the playoffs, he wasn't that great. Like, if we're being honest here, like, he was fine, but he didn't do anything that's like Tyrese Halliburton memorable playoff performance. Everybody's going to remember the 2021 playoff performance that he had during that run. People are going to still talk about it for that reason. You talk about Boston. People forget that series because they lost. They lost the 6 games. They did. If you want to chalk it up to, they lost series, okay, fine. But you didn't come out of that series saying Trae held us back. Trae put it all out there. Trae led that playoffs in fourth quarter scoring till like the Eastern Western Conference Finals. And he only played 1 series. But yet, he's not good. He's not a star. He's not it. We have yet to see Trae Young back in that moment because the team hasn't been good enough, but we're using that to indict him. The DeJounte and Trae Young pairing didn't work just because it just wasn't a good fit at all. And that is not an indictment on DeJounte Murray or Trae Young. That's just not a good fit. You cannot use a good fit as an indictment on a player. If 2 guys don't fit, why are we saying it's because that player isn't that good? It sometimes just don't work. And that happens in this game. What they've done this year is now formulate guys they feel like fit better with him, fit better with his skill set, and fits better as a team. And we'll see what it ends up being. This team has a ton of upside, but we don't know if that upside will be reached. And that's why people don't know how to feel about this team. But we just got to remind ourselves, Trae Young's one of the stars in the game that has had memorable playoff performances, has showed up in big moments, but he also has had downfalls like every single star in this league has had. like that's not crazy. Giannis has, LeBron has, Dwayne Wade had a down series. Ant has, like every star. Jason, we crucify Jason Tatum. You know what I'm saying? We crucify that man. Everybody has had bad series and bad performances. Trae Young is not excluded from that conversation. But you also have to give appreciation to when he does have great performances and when he does do great things. And that's the main gist of what I'm trying to say. Is like we gotta stop nitpicking him. Right? DeJounte is gone now. Let's see how this team looks with him being the by far number 1 option again. Obviously, his new running mate looks like it'll be Jalen Johnson. We will see how that pairing works, and we will see how things go. Right? Which leads me to my last point. Steve Koonin was on 92.9 a game, comes on there, talks, and mentioned that the Hawks might have Trae Young as their oldest starter in the starting lineup this year. Now, obviously, my first take to that is Steve Koonin will say things to get people talking, but the Hawks have, I don't know how much I'm assuming he knows things, but if you ever listen to him talk, you can tell there's certain things he's not trying to say, and then he'll say stuff like that. If that happens, that would mean, I believe, Hunter, Bogey, and Clint would not be starting, right? Which, I mean, for some people, they want that. They want Bogey on the bench, they want Clint on the bench, and they want Hunter on the bench. So for some people, that may be music to their ears if that was the case. Because that probably means Rishi Shea is starting, probably Okongwu is starting, and then maybe Dyson or Kobe is starting. That's what you would assume would be if that was the case. Which some people want that. I don't know if you want that, let me know. But listen, I think the rotations and starting lineup this year is going to be interesting because it's either going to be what everybody thinks it probably is going to be, which is Trae, Bogey, Hunter, Jalen, and Clint, or Quinn has the ability to switch it up and shock us and then go with someone different. And Quinn plays that close to the vest. He's not just going to tell us when or who's going to start. So we won't know these things until the season starts. But we're going to probably, someone's going to overreact when they see, if they go and say, hey, Dyson, you're going to start in this preseason game with the starting lineup. Someone's going to sit there and say, see, Dyson Daniels starting too. And we still don't know. They could still go into opening night against Brooklyn and start Bogey. Listen, if they want to go young, I'm for it. Listen, at the end of the day, honestly, for me, if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't care who starts. I just want to see what this team looks like working together, rotations, how they fit, the chemistry. You added all these wing defenders. Does the defense improve? How does the offense look? Does Jalen Johnson take another step? That's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about who's starting across the board. Because at the end of the day, if they're winning games and they're playing at a high level and they're playing good basketball, it works out for everybody. So that's just me. Like I said, if you guys have an opinion on that or who you would like to see in that starting lineup, leave your comments down below for sure, man. But yeah. So I think that's about it for today's episode. Felt like I rambled a little bit, but happens, man. It happens. I just, you see the conversations that are had and you're just kind of like, what is going on right now? But it is what it is. So I appreciate you guys tuning in for the Bleav in Hawks podcast. Definitely go ahead, like I said, subscribe to the video if you enjoyed the episode. Like the video too for more Bleav in Hawks content. Also available on any podcast platform out there. If you can't watch it video wise and you want to watch the audio, listen to the audio version, definitely go ahead, check me out on any audio podcast platform out there. Obviously, we're getting closer to the season, so things will probably start to ramp up. Media days is next month, so obviously the Hawks will be back in Atlanta very soon to talk to the media. Still hopeful I can get out there. We'll see for that, so I'll keep you guys updated on that. But we'll have to see. But I appreciate you guys tuning in to Bleav in Hawks podcast. It's your boy Bryce Lewis. We'll see you next time.